Okay, so good morning, everyone, and welcome to our session today. This session is titled The Rice Race, Making Self-Sufficiency a Reality in West Africa. It is jointly organized by the Competitive African Rice Initiative, which is a program of a GIZ, and United Phosphorus Limited, UPL, which is a leading multinational provider of agricultural inputs. My name is Elizabeth Maloba. I will be hosting this session, moderating this session, and I will have the support of Mr. Jerome Hassler, who's a strategic communications professional in hosting this session. Before we start the session, I'd like to invite you to let us know who you are and where you're joining us from. It's also a good chance for us to test the technical capacity of the site. So please type in the chat your name and where in the world do you join us from? Which city, which country are you joining us from? So I'm really looking forward to seeing this. I do have to multi-screen, but please type your name in the chat and where in the world are you joining us from, so we have a good idea where we all come from and we find a way to get to know each other a bit better. I am so looking forward to this. I see someone said we'll be starting soon. Thank you, Christopher, for letting us know that we'll start soon. And I see that we have quite a number of people in the session. So please let us know. Someone's joining us. Kalisa, welcome from Accra, Ghana. Welcome into the session. I see we have another person from Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire. Welcome. Bienvenue. Thank you for joining us. I think it's fairly early in Abidjan. Ah, someone else. Sasha, welcome from Germany. And I see Kazim, I think from Lagos, Nigeria. Wonderful that you could join us. Boladele, welcome from Nigeria. Welcome. So very interesting group of people. I see Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Germany, Nigeria. I'm sitting in Nairobi, Kenya. And I happen to know that there are different people on this call. Some of my speakers are joining us from Sierra Leone, I know. A few others are joining us from Nigeria. I believe Jerome is joining us from London. Christopher is joining us from Washington, DC. Wow. These are the joys of the internet sessions. We can all be part of one global event and be joining it from a different part of the world. Pierre, yes, Pierre, welcome from Morocco. Bienvenue. And I see Faith is joining us from Jos in Nigeria. Welcome. I need to learn some Nigerian words, although I'm sure Nigerian is not a language. Dr. Abubakar Karim is joining us from Sierra Leone. Welcome, sir. Thank you for joining us. Ernest Obi is joining us from Abuja, Nigeria. Welcome. Thank you. Bola Dale, I think I forgot to mention, it's Abuja in Nigeria you're joining us from. Welcome. Thank you. Great. So I see we have, oh, I have someone from Gloucester, and I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, but I hope I did. Welcome, Lily. And I have Joyce from Houston. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for this session. Great.
Yes, I'm here. Yeah.
So wonderful. Thank you all so much for taking time to join us this morning. And I really appreciate your commitment to this session. As we all know, rice is a staple food in many countries of West and Central Africa, and it constitutes a major diet in many other countries in Africa. With the exception of a few countries, I believe it's Egypt that is the only exception on the African continent. African countries have not attained self-sufficiency in rice production. In other words, the rice demand exceeds production, and therefore we are net importers of rice. We import large quantities of rice at a huge cost in hard currency. The need for increased resilience and food security has taken on a new significance in the wake of a COVID-19 pandemic. Leaders in West and Central Africa are increasing their focus on developing local rice cultivation as a route to food self-sufficiency. In today's session, we're going to attempt to answer the core question: how can cultivation and agronomy for smallholders farmers, rice value chain actors, and government and regional policy be aligned to make self-sufficiency a reality in West Africa? To address this question, we're going to have two eminent keynote speakers, and after that, it will be followed by a panel discussion. I am going to keep my eye on the chat just to see what questions come up and integrate them in the discussion with the panelists. I also have support doing this, so thank you very much, Laura. I know you're keeping an eye on the chat with me, and we promise to do our best to make sure that all your questions are answered during the session. Our first speaker this morning is going to be Mr. Honest Obi. Mr. Obi is speaking on behalf of Mr. Alain Traore, who is the Director of Agriculture and Rural Development at the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS Commission. Mr. Obi is the Head of Agriculture Division in the Directorate of Agriculture and Rural Development at ECOWAS. He is a food and nutrition expert and has over 30 years of experience in agricultural technology, food safety, nutrition, climate change, land policy, and agricultural value chains within the framework of ECOWAS. Mr. Obi, the floor is all yours. I hope you can manage to share your slides. Please go ahead. Mr. Obi, I think you're still on mute.
Elizabeth?
Yes? Yes, Boladale.
You're muting? Can you unmute?
Okay, Jerome, Kalisa, please unmute Mr. Obi. For some reason, it seems his microphone is not unmuting on his end. Thank you. And I go mute now. Mr. Obi, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much.
When it comes to technology, expect the unexpected. Did the screen freeze? Seems it did. We're having a week.
My presentation this morning would be the rice economy in West Africa and the key elements. So my presentation, rice self-sufficiency in West Africa, and we'll also look at the rice value chain.
I believe it's not working perfectly. I may have to ask for your support, Boladale. Is it possible to stop screen sharing and just speak without using the slides? I seem to have, yes. So Mr. Obi, I'm sorry to stop the screen sharing, but maybe without the slides it will work better. So if you can just speak about the slides without sharing them with us, that's also okay with me. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. My presentation is the rice economy in West Africa, And I want to start with the overview. Rice is a very important food crop in our region, and we are a region that consumes a lot of rice, and we are definitely not
Unfortunately, we seem to have lost all sound. I think I will step in at this point and ask Boladale and Mr. Obi to check their technical connection again. And in the meantime, while they are working on that, I'll ask the second speaker to make his intervention. So Mr. Obi, I'm going to put it on hold for a few minutes so that you can work on your technical connection. And in the meantime, let me introduce our second speaker. So our second intervention this morning is being made by Dr. Abubakar Karim. He's the Minister of Agriculture and Forestry in the government of Sierra Leone. He also acts as the Presidential Advisor for Trade and Investment within the government of Sierra Leone and acts as an ambassador at large between Sierra Leone and Liberland. Dr. Karim was previously a specialist practitioner.
Which produces one.
Just a quick note again to, yes, thank you, Bola. If we can just hold Mr. Obi's presentation to make sure that the internet connection is stable. So in the meantime, Dr. Karim, please go ahead and make your 15-minute intervention. Mr. Obi, you'll definitely be making your presentation. I'm just giving Bola a few minutes to work on the technical while Dr. Karim speaks. Thank you. Dr. Karim,
Elizabeth,
yes,
can he present from my system?
Yes, he can if the internet is stable, but I think let's have Dr. Abu Karim speaking now, and then after that we can come back to you. Please, thank you.
Okay, very well, that's fine.
Dr. Abu Karim.
Thank you very much. I hope you're all hearing me. I hope you're all getting me. Thank you very much.
Use mine.
Good morning. I wish to extend greetings to you all from Sierra Leone for this special session of the AGRF Virtual Summit on this 7th day of September, 2020. Topic, the rice race, making rice sufficiency a reality in West Africa, is what this event is about. And we are all aware of the figures and the reasons why it is very important to reach this goal as soon as possible. Rice is a major staple for most African countries, especially in West Africa, with an increase of 6% per annum. Rice self-sufficiency is important for the economic and political stability of many African countries. 16 million metric tons of rice is imported to Africa with a value of 6 billion USD. This huge amount of money has to become income for our local farmers. With the enormous potential in agriculture, the continent could become a powerhouse for rice production in the globe if this potential is well managed with the capacity to export to the rest of the world. The current rice requirement for Sierra Leone is 1,077,043 metric tons, while our current production level of milled rice is about 610,000 metric tons. This result shows the existing gap in rice self-sufficiency in Sierra Leone. However, the government's willingness to cover this gap propelled the setting of 86% growth in rice production by 2023. This fact prompted BBC Gioma Ndokwe to ask, why don't they grow more of it instead of importing so much? Over the years, many African nations, including Sierra Leone, have gone through some sort of instability, leading to grain market crises, shortages in rice that made the continent rethink its food security and ability to supply the local market. The performance of the sector in West Africa has been low. Cereal yields and the use of modern farm inputs, including improved seeds, mechanization, and irrigation, fall way below global average. The sector is still dominated by a large number of subsistence farmers. It suffers from low level of public investment, including access to finance for farmers and agribusinesses. As a result, many African leaders made rice farming a priority. We must begin to see agriculture not as a development sector for managing poverty, but rather for creating wealth. The future of Africa depends on agriculture, particularly the production of our staple food. During several visits to Asia, I got to know the capacity of Asian know-how and the dedication of its farmers to the rice crop. Asia has managed to become not only food self-sufficient, it has managed to become a main exporter of agricultural products within a few decades. Many millions are brought out of poverty every year. Agriculture was the foundation of the Asian economic success. More generally, successful Asian experience offers us important lessons for agro-industrialization. Today, Asia's agricultural output is led by large private agribusiness enterprises engaged in industrial agriculture. There is no denying that without the Green Revolution, Asia could not have become the industrial and economic giant that it is today. On one of my recent visits to Vietnam, I met with the experts of the Hanoi Rice University. After discussions about the agricultural potential, climatic conditions, and water resources in Sierra Leone, my team asked the experts to give us a timeline ideal when they think Sierra Leone can become self-sufficient in rice. After a moment of silence, the head of the university answered 3 years with full government support. This has become our goal for the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry. Rice self-sufficiency by 2023. So the overall goal for West Africa to stop rice importation by 2025 is achievable. All technical information, know-how, equipment, expertise, and high-yielding varieties are available worldwide. The technologies to feed Africa already exist. High-yielding seeds can allow farmers to get multiple harvests in 1 year or in a season. High-yielding rice varieties that meet or beat international standards of imported rice now exist. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have to start and put in our work, our resources to encourage our farmers. What is needed now is taking these technologies to scale for widespread adoption by farmers. That will not happen by itself. It will require specific policies to provide incentives for farmers. So what is our strategy in Sierra Leone? Set up a private sector-driven seed breeding and multiplication for adapted seed rice seeds. Support farmers with land preparation, inputs and extension services. More focus on commercial farmers. Set up private sector-led managed machine rings and service providers. Invest in irrigation to ensure the production of 2 to 3 crops per year. Invest in post-harvesting to reduce post-harvest loss. Intensive training of extension officers to support farmers. Support private paddy off-takers and rice millers to improve the local market for farmers. Develop new large agricultural areas. Enable and encourage local agricultural banks to loan monies to farmers on single-digit interest. As we discussed today, West Africa must wake up and brace up to run the rice race in a bid to make rice self-sufficiency a reality in our region. Sierra Leone has already started the race to reach its 2023 target. I therefore look forward to a fruitful deliberation and sharing of ideas on how to enhance agricultural industrialization and intensification of local rice production in West Africa in particular, and Africa as a whole. Agriculture contributes over 28% of the GDP of Africa, while contributing 54.7% of Sierra Leone's GDP. This shows that agriculture holds the key for the accelerated growth and diversification and job creation for African economies. No region of the world has moved to industrialized economic status without passing through the transformation of the agriculture sector. The reason is simple. Agriculture provides the basic raw material needed for industrial development. Food accounts for the highest share of consumer price index, and providing cheap food is critical for taming inflation. When inflation is low, interest rate declines and it brings greater private sector investment. A more productive, efficient, and competitive agriculture sector is critical for boosting rural economies, where a majority of the population live in Africa. A more prosperous rural economy will drive jobs and accelerate rural savings, critical for more inclusive growth. The simple formula, therefore, is agriculture allied with industry, manufacturing, and processing capability equals to strong and sustainable economic development and wealth creation throughout the economy. Africa must not miss opportunity for such linkages whenever they knock at the doors. As Minister of Agriculture and Forestry in Sierra Leone, I am working with my team of experts to move aggressively towards rice intensification. Now, let us make it happen and win this race. I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abu Karim, for joining us for this session and for giving us your intervention. I invite you to share any comments and questions you may have for Dr. Karim in the chat. He is going to be staying with us, but very briefly. I know that he has to leave in another 10 or 15 minutes. So I'll take this opportunity to thank him for spending some time with us this morning. And I look forward to seeing if you have any comments that we can share with him in a few minutes. I would now like to try and see if technology is going to behave this time. Yes, I see the slides. So Mr. Obi, please go ahead and make your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Elizabeth. I would make my presentation.
Yes, definitely, go ahead.
In West Africa, rice is a very important strategic and political crop, has increased over time, whilst production levels are not matching the consumption rates. So as a result,
I believe this is also still not working. Let's try this. Bola, if you can stop screen, Bola Dale, if you can stop screen
West
sharing.
Africa, in terms of rice production, in 2017, for example, we produced 15.8 million.
I'm sorry, I have to intervene. I have to interrupt again. Bola Dale, please stop sharing your screen. And then I'm going to ask Jerome to share his screen. So if we can have that switch, please, so that Bola Dale stops sharing her screen. And then if we can have Jerome's screen, perfect, great. And then maybe Mr. Obi can now just speak using Bola Dale's computer. And
Okay.
let's see if we get much better audio without trying to do the screen as well. Technology has its moments.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay, can I go ahead?
Yes,
okay.
I can hear you perfectly now.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. So what I was saying earlier is that the consumption rates has increased drastically, whilst we are not producing enough
Unfortunately, I do have to interrupt this again. It's just keeps failing at the most critical moment. I'm not quite sure what would be the best way to do this. I can't hear Mr. Obi. I suspect that means everybody else can't hear it. Yes, I see the technical moderator tells me we're having technical problems as well. I don't know if Mr. Obi can hear me for the time being. We're going to have to move on.
5,000 metric tons, followed by Mali with 1.9 thousand metric tons milk equivalent. So basically in the region, it's Nigeria and Mali that have shown very promising signs of self-sufficiency over time. Other countries are at different levels, like Sierra Leone, 69%, Guinea, 66%, Ghana, 39%, and Senegal, 30%, in that order. Now, in terms of the rice value chain challenges, we have quite a lot. In the area of production, we have inadequate irrigation facilities, low levels of farming technologies for rice, and yields hampered by challenges of weeds, insects, birds, and diseases. In terms of processing, we adopt traditional and manual systems of processing which are outdated. We also have the perennial challenge in the region of power failures, which increases the cost of dramatically. It increases the cost of production and processing. And also we have limited use of the byproducts in the region. In terms of end use, one of the biggest challenge is that you have several middlemen squeezing margins for retailers. We also have a lot of fragmented supply dominated by smallholders with low bargaining power, and also open markets, which is mostly dominant retail chains. Rice is, as I said in my introduction, is a regional strategic crop, and there seems to be a lot of regional rice trade. We have over $2 billion was spent on rice importation in 2019. In terms of the regional rice trade, we experience a lot of logistical disruption due to the effects of national policies, and most recently due to the effect of global pandemic COVID-19 in 2020. We also have low efficiency of rice processing and distribution. And one of the biggest challenges is the low preference for locally produced rice and its uncompetitiveness when compared with Asian imports. Now, in terms of the ECOWAS Commission, we have what we call the Regional Rice Offensive, which is anchored on the ECOWAS agriculture policy, which is also anchored on the Comprehensive Africa Agricultural Development Program, CADEP. And out of these strategic processes and documents, we have the Regional Rice Offensive, which is a 10-year program. It was reviewed this year in 2020 after 5 years, and it will end in 2025. Quickly, what are some of the key objectives. We want to achieve rice self-sufficiency by 2025. ECOWAS member states want to become rice exporters by 2025. We also want to achieve food security and nutrition in the region by 2025. And we want to use rice as a vehicle for economic development. In terms of the ECOWAS Rice Initiative, it's not a standalone. It's part and parcel of other initiatives in the region. We have the Competitive Africa Rice Initiative, which is CARI. We have the Coalition for Africa Rice Development, CAD. We have the Korea Africa Food and Agricultural Cooperation Initiative, the Partnership for Sustainable Rice System Development in Sub-Saharan Africa, and other related interventions by Africa Rice and other key actors. In 2020, the ECOWAS Commission organized a meeting earlier in the year, February 2020, in which we brought together all the key actors in the rice sector, governments, private sector, research institutions, to discuss about the performance of the ECOWAS Rice Offensive and to plan strategies for moving it forward up to 2025. This was with the support of CAD and GIZ CARI, and we came up with 6 strategic pillars that would help us to develop the rice sectors. Quickly, some of the key pillars are policy and regulatory measures, finance and public-private partnership mechanism, knowledge sharing and management, efficient trade and marketing systems, coordination of national interprofessional organizations, and coordination of and management of the action plans. In terms of opportunities in West Africa, we have lots of opportunities which we want to utilize and also invite both domestic and foreign investors to participate in. The issue of land is not a problem because we have extensive land for rice production in the region. We can definitely practice intensification agriculture to achieve sustainable productivity. We have large irrigated and irrigable lands, which we are only using 8% of irrigated lands. Rice farmers, we have quite a lot of rice farmers who are making substantial contribution to food security in the region. But this only represents only 5% of the total ECOWAS population in 2029. In terms of achieving rice sector competitiveness, we hinge our intervention on 3 pillars. 1 is production intensification. 2 is value creation, value addition that will help to create jobs for our youths, our women, and other actors. And the 3rd pillar in terms of competitiveness would be commercialization, as was said by the participants, the presenter from Sierra Leone. We want to make rice cultivation, we want to make agriculture a business and not just a way of life or a development interventions. So we, as a commission, we want to intensify production systems. We want to do a lot of value addition by improving competitiveness and marketing. We want to support and strengthen agricultural research and innovation capacity. We also want to promote regional rice trades between ECOWAS member states. We want to support the consumption of locally produced rice as opposed to foreign imported rice. And also a key element would be partnership between the public sector and the private sector. And when we talk about private sector, we are also encouraging not just foreign direct investments, but we are looking at domestic investments. It's happening in Nigeria with the likes of Dangote, and many other Nigerian private sector operators investing massively in various stages of the rice value chain. Basically, these are some of the issues which the ECOWAS Commission with our development partners want to pursue from now up to 2025, when the first 10 years of the ECOWAS rice offensive will come to an end. Thank you very much, Madam Moderator and all participants. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Obi, especially for bearing with us despite the technical challenges. I'm happy that it finally worked. I will very briefly go back to Dr. Abu Karim. There are two questions that have come up in the chat that we have asked him if he will find some time, and he has graciously agreed to respond to them. So Dr. Abu Karim, there are two questions for you in the chat. One of them is, can you briefly talk about how Sierra Leone is thinking about input supply and subsidies to support farmers? And the second one is, what contribution do you expect from the private sector in the national rice strategy? Over to you, Dr. Karim. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. And thank you very much for everybody in the forum. For us here, what we have done, obviously, in relation to the questions that have been posed, in terms of subsidies, it's really to look, as we've been saying, the idea is really to make agriculture a business, but also we need to drag our farmers along with us. So recently we've developed policies wherein we've moved things like fertilizer supply and and seeds to the private sector, with the view that government will actually subsidize a certain portion of it, but really we want it to be private sector led. And by so doing, we actually introducing the e-voucher system, where obviously we as a government will subsidize our farmers in that respect. For the private sector component, what we have also done with that as a government is provide some form of financing funds which government have allocated to the private sector, so that they can actually get those loans for on a single-digit interest rate. That way, it opens an opportunity for the farmers to be able to take loans at an appreciable level that will be, commensurate to what they'll be able to provide. So those are the areas we are looking at, we're thinking of currently. So like I said, in terms of subsidies, we decided policy has now been done, which is actually out there. So we have going to have a fertilizer agency, a seed agency, and those will be responsible for managing it. Because over the years, what we've actually find out is with inputs that we give to farmers, they always think this is government. So the returns, recovery has been a struggle, from what we've given them in the past. But we think doing this way and encouraging them to actually go out there and take, the requisite supply or inputs from the private sector is a better way forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for graciously taking these questions and for responding, and for leading us very perfectly into the panel discussion by letting us know the measures that are being taken at national level to ensure that self-sufficiency is attained in Sierra Leone. As we say in Swahili, asante sana for joining us. I would like at this point to take the opportunity to introduce the panel, which is going to be joining us in a discussion in a few minutes around a number of questions. I would like to first start by thanking my panelists for being so gracious as to accept to be part of this session and for taking all the measures to ensure the technology works. We have 4 panelists having this discussion. You have already met Mr. Ernest Obe, who's the head of agriculture at ECOWAS. He will be joined on the panel by Hajia Salamatu Garba. Salamatu is the founder of the Women Farmers Advancement Network, which is a network composed of over 42,000 registered cooperatives, and approximately 75% of these are female farmers and processors. She is a plant pathology lecturer. She has 15 years experience in 2 Nigerian universities. She's an Ashoka Global Fellow, and she is a recipient of a Rare Gem Award of the United Nations Information Unit and a steering committee member of the Global Women for Water Partnership. Welcome, Salamatu. In addition, on the panel will be Mr. Jay Shroff. Jay is the CEO of UPL. He is a well-recognized global leader in the chemical and agri-inputs industry with over 30 years experience in India and internationally. He believes passionately in the power of collaboration and intersectoral partnerships and is actively involved in the global development agenda, including the World Economic Forum's Grow Africa and Grow Asia initiatives, IFPRI's Sustainable Agriculture and Global Food Security Initiative, WBCSD, the Chicago Council, IGD, and ICAR. And finally, on the panel, we have Wolfgang Bertenbreiter. He is an agricultural economist. He works for the German Development Corporation since 1989. And he is specialized in program management, seed production, climate smart agriculture, environmental and social standards, and organizational development. Welcome to all my panelists. I'm going to start by talking to Salamatu. And I'd like to talk about rice in Nigeria, Salamatu. What potential do you see for self-sufficiency? And what are the key challenges facing you? Salamatu.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I have slight challenges with my network. I hope you can all hear me. Nigeria has the prospect to increase even the production we have now. We have enough potential to increase food, that is the rice, and also to improve industrial raw material from the rice, as well as provide even rice in surplus in order to be able to feed the nation and export them. Also, Nigeria has a teeming population of women and youth, viable and willing to learn. We also have the land, enough for us to increase the production we are having. Currently, from statistics, we are utilizing about 39 to 49% of the arable land we need for rice production. Also, we have very good warm policy from government, especially that is trying to ban importation of rice and make local rice competitive so that women and youth will fit favorably into rice production and make rice production a profitable venture for themselves. So with this, it is promising that Nigeria can do better than we are, and we have scaled up in the last 2 years by close to 20% in the production of rice. Having said all this, we still have some bottlenecks around rice production. For instance, research is limited, and this is linked to the fact that we are faced with environmental challenges, and we need to bring out rice that can suit these challenges that we are facing. For instance, flood and scarcity of rain. We also have limited powers of extension services. As such, we have limited technical know-how to farmers. And having said that, it means that we can increase technology and ICT, where ICT will boost the performance of extension workers. If we make ICT-led rice production, it means that we can produce more than 50% extra from what we are producing now. So these problems is joined also to mechanization. Our farmers, especially those at the lower base of the pyramid, are still using the locally fabricated technology. They still use hoes and so on, instead of them using transplanters and all other forms of simple and cheap, affordable, accessible technology. So we feel that if we improve this, it will still increase production. Likewise, in terms of processing, you'll find out that the small, medium enterprises are left behind, and they form more than 50% value into the rice production chain. So if attention is given to them, it means that more production will be produced. The farmers are closer to the small and medium millers, but very little attention is given to them. So I envisage a situation where we can pay more attention to these small and medium enterprises, the small scale farmers who have less than 2-hectare farms, and also to make sure that research is translated into action so that seeds that can resist flood, seeds that can withstand stress, and seeds that can also be resistant to pests and other things will play an important role. And we put more emphasis on our seed bills and make sure that standard seeds are taken to the platform of the farmers. Thank you.
Thank you, Salamatu. That's a very promising picture that there is the potential to achieve self-sufficiency as long as we ensure that smallholder farmers are also included. I would like to take this immediately over to Jay and pose the question to him. Smallholders are obviously important players if self-sufficiency is to be achieved. What is needed from their perspective to make self-sufficiency a reality? And thank you for joining us this morning, Jay.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Good evening. It's a very inspiring vision from the Minister Abu Karim and also the ECOWAS Minister. It was a very, very clear thought. From the private sector, this is very inspiring for us to see the commitments of the governments to be self-sufficient. You know, I come from India, but UPL is a global company and we are leaders in bringing technology to smallholder farmers. As you can imagine, India is not only self-sufficient in food, but we are a major exporter of food now. And this has been a transition from the 1960s. And India has really shown how this can be done. Primarily with private sector, but also with a very clear vision of the government. As everyone knows, India is 1.3 billion people, and you know, it is very critical to have food security. I often tell the ministers that if we have a slight mishap in agriculture, we cannot. There's no supplier for enough food for a country like India, and there would be a big problem. So what have we learned from India? What have we learned, and what can Africa do, and what can we do to support the vision of Africa's self-sufficiency? We are very excited about it. UPL has consistently invested in the last 10 years in developing technologies to make farmers more resilient. How do you make farmers more resilient? As our panelist was saying, Salamoto, she was saying that rice needs to be flood tolerant. It needs to be stress tolerant. And UPL is very proud to say that today we have technologies which can help farmers be more resilient by using technology to be more resilient. And these platforms are available. We need to have access to those farmers. We need to train them, and we need to get access to high quality seeds. You know, UPL has, we work in different parts of the world, particularly in India with smallholder farmers, where we have intensive training for farmers for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. They come to our development farms, they spend time there, they work hard, and they learn the best practices. My personal view is that to make Africa self-sufficient, you know, the most important thing is to make sure that the farmers have good cash flows. If you can offer farmers a guaranteed offtake for his production and a reasonable value for his output, you will get a lot of energy. right? Even banking wise, if you guaranteed offtake, the banks are more comfortable with offering loans because they know that the farmers are going to be able to be self-sufficient, and they're going to be able to not only pay the interest but also pay the loans back. You know, in the last 10 years, UPL has developed different types of hybrid rice seeds, and we have tested them all across ECOWAS. We are pretty sure that we can triple the average yield. So if they're getting about 1 ton, we can get 3 tons to 4 tons per hectare of seed of grain production. We are very also excited about the opportunity which the minister mentioned, that, you know, can we have a local production of hybrid seeds, because hybrid seeds will give you the extra production which is needed. And at UPL, we are committed. Our team has worked out a project to work on 600,000 hectares. And the idea is to really take those 600,000 hectares and double or triple the yield for those farmers. We believe that the technology is available. We are committed to training the farmers. We are committed to bringing in the technology and make the seeds available. We are also willing to invest in local production to make it available, because we believe that the smallholder farmers can be the solution for food security for Africa. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Jay. So invest in new varieties, invest in technology, including extension services and intensive training, and ensure that farmers have positive cash flow.
Absolutely.
I'll take this straight over to Wolfgang, and I will pose the question to him. Wolfgang, how would smallholder farmers, having been enabled in the way that Jay has described, be able to compete with imports from Asia, considering that the transport costs in Africa are prohibitive and the ones in Asia land in a port in Africa at a fraction of the cost?
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth, and good morning to all from my side. Yeah, it's not an easy question to answer, because how can farmers compete with? Because looking at the transport within a country due to this infrastructure are often higher than what we call from port to port. Like if I see what I said, sometimes a sentence would say, Bangkok is closer to Lagos than Kano to Lagos. Because from the harbor, because the transport of 1 ton of rice from Bangkok will take only $100, whereas the transport by truck from Kano region down to Lagos will be about by $200, $250 a ton. So farmers, so it means for the capitals, it's very easy to get rice from abroad because it's cheap. But for a small-scale farmer, if he would like to send down his rice to a capital to the necessary marketing places, he has to really pay a higher transport cost. So question would be, what can he do? One possibility would be to compensate with to check on the local market, what is possible on the local market, what can he offer? Can he use the local market? What is the uptake of the local market? And then to look on the local, or call it in his regional markets, to sell it in to avoid transport costs. Another opportunity on this would be one of the ways would be to associate with other farmers or with in bulking their products, and to have to organize bigger transportation, and to at the lower risk. Also, question is also time with the rice. How can you compete it? Does the population likes the rice from Asia, or they really would prefer the local varieties? Then to look for what I call it a gap in the market. What is the preference of the consumers in the different areas, and what can he provide to them in type of quality and taste? Because sometimes taste is very important for the consumers. Looking back to my time in Sierra Leone, farmers in the upland didn't like the Asian rice, I have to say. They were happy with the red rice and the heavy rice and as a stable food. So the question is all the time where to go. On the policy level, I have to say there's one way to a government can do something. This is what they call it the special safeguard mechanisms. WTO allows it to protect some imports, because the safeguard mechanisms is a protection measure allowed for developing countries to take contingency restriction against agricultural imports that are causing injuries to domestic farmers. So it means they could increase the tariffs by importing so that their local farmers can be a little bit more competitive in time. So they're compensating for transport. I'm not very in favor of putting tariffs on products because it's a little, because if you look at the world market, so it has to be liberalized. However, but what Salamatu told already, so the government of Nigeria is already taking measures to protect the local market, and so looking forward to make or give the opportunity to the local producers to become competitive with the time. So it's also a measure to give the farmers time to be more and more competitive in production, but also to be more competitive on transport costs. And this would be an opportunity for short-term measures for the countries to say protect at the border, give up to put a higher tariffs on imported rice, and this will be the opportunity for the locals to learn with the time to be more competitive. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Wolfgang. Ernest, let me take this policy question and bring it to you. From a policy point of view, what commitments exist or can be made to protect smallholder farmers or to enable them to compete with imports, as picking it up from where Wolfgang left it?
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. As has been said by earlier speakers, if we want to attain the objectives of rice self-sufficiency in West Africa and by extension the continent, I strongly believe that the smallholder farmers should be at the center of activities because they are the ones who produce most of the rice, with the exception of large-scale commercial and private sector intervention. We must, as a region and from a policy point of view, try as best as possible to provide the smallholder farmers with the relevant support mechanisms. Where they do not exist, we should put them in place. Where they exist, we need to strengthen them. And what do I mean by support mechanisms? We must look at the issues of inputs. You cannot produce high quality rice without inputs. So the need for inputs is, for me, is number one. We must also, from a policy perspective, improve on support. We must support advisory and extension services so that the farmers can be exposed to modern rice production technologies, modern to improve rice varieties, as Wolfgang said. We must ensure that they have the right varieties that can increase their yields and productivity. Also, we must promote in a very big way the value chain approach to rice development. You cannot talk about increasing production when you don't address issues dealing with processing, storage, and marketing. These are important areas I think we need to invest in as a region. And at the same time, too, we must
Okay, we seem to have lost Ernest, but from what I heard before it finally disconnected, We must provide smallholder farmers with relevant support mechanisms. That has to do with inputs, extension services. We have to look at the value chain approach to rice development. So storage and processing and marketing are critical components. I'm sure we are going to be able to have him rejoining us. So I will trust the technology will solve the problem as we go. Let me try and incorporate some questions from the audience at this point. I'd like to take this back to Jay, and I do have to ask him a question that came up from the audience. So Jay, this one's for you. How would you create seed stock for hybrids? And can some of that be done locally? And if it can be done, what training would be needed? Jay, very briefly.
Yes, no, definitely the seed stock can be done. In our experience, UPL is very actively involved in agriculture in West Africa and the ECOWAS region. And when I was traveling in Niger and some of the other countries, I found that farmers are very interested in improving their productivity and using better quality seeds. But the availability of seeds and for the seed companies to stock product in the local countries is very difficult with the uncertainties and the logistics. So my request to the government at that time was that why don't you, because the farmers do not want cheap seeds, they want good quality seeds and they're willing to pay for it because they see the benefit of that. I think if the planning can be done and the governments can intervene and import the seed, they could easily sell it at market. And while the governments can initially subsidize it, but I think long-term, there's no need for subsidy when you can actually increase yield. The question number 2 is, development training centers are very easily done where you can take 10 hectares, 20 hectares, 30 hectares in different parts of the country and train youths together with agriculture universities, set up training camps where farmers can come in for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. In India, we train 20,000 farmers a year. They come in and live in dormitories and go through an intensive 2-week program on what are the practices for better agriculture. And they are so committed and excited to learn. We get a lot of letters from farmers thanking us for little intervention and little bit of help. So definitely can be done. And third thing is that I believe that the hybrid seed production can be brought to the ECOWAS region together with the government, together with the agriculture universities or just the private sector. We are going to do that as a pilot scale. I believe in Ivory Coast, our team is committed to set up a production farm, but we would love to do that in Sierra Leone. We are very impressed with the minister's comments and his clear vision, and private sector with a clear vision from the government can really do a lot, achieve a lot. I believe the farmers in Africa are ready to embrace modern technology and get better quality seeds. And I believe the market is ready. We must take this whole pandemic as an opportunity to scale agriculture production in Africa. And I think this is a great platform for us to clearly have a defined strategy and responsibility for each member of the community to do that.
Thank you so much, Jay. I want to take another question from the audience, and I'm going to pose it to Salamatu. Salamatu, what is the situation of marketing of rice produced by small-scale farmers? In your experience in Nigeria, what is the situation of marketing of rice?
Thank you very much. You see, for rice marketing now, there's a lot of improvement, especially with programs like the GIZ Carry project, where contract farming is emphasized. And that is where we bring the private sector together with the farmers, and we agree on pricing, and we do the pricing like twice before farming activities and at the point of harvest, so that we get a win-win negotiation. So marketing used to be a problem, but like this new initiatives introduced, it makes it a lot easier, because immediately farmers produce to specification, and it means that there's a ready market for them to go back and recycle again and go to the next season. And you see, farmers are now doing 2-season production, both rainy and dry season. So market is okay. The same thing for the women. And I also use it to solicit for them to be given more attention. But from what we are doing with Carry, for instance, these are farm laborers or hand support to small millers. But today they own their own businesses. All they do is parboiling, which fits into the system, and that increases production, which means there is more marketing for them, and they get their money and take back. It is hopeful that marketing will increase as we increase production and link private sector to government agencies and the farmers by themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Salamatu. As I wait to hear if there are any more questions from the audience, I'm going to take my next question, and I'm going to take this one to Mr. Obi, Ernest Obi. I'm hoping the technology is back to working. Let's explore the concept of collaboration. What are your thoughts on the possibility or the potential of defragmenting the rice sector to make it more symbiotic? Mr. Obi? Okay, I see that he's not able to join us and respond. Maybe I pass this question on to Mr. Bartenbreiter. Wolfgang, what are your thoughts on making the rice sector more symbiotic?
Okay, no, we're not. To make it more symbiotic, I think you have to go into a very holistic approach and to look at, to analyze properly the rice value chain from the beginning up to the end. What are the interventions on the different levels? Because you have a very complete system. You have the input supply, you have fertilizers and seed. Seed has to be available on the right time in the right moment. Also, the fertilizers or the other agricultural inputs has to be on time on the spot. Otherwise, it can be useless. It doesn't mean that, and then also I have to say symbiotic, if you go back, and the inputs have to be available and it has to be effective. Looking back to the history, in some of the shops you find pesticides already 2 years on the shelves, so it's useless. Also, sometimes if you look in shops, the seed can also be overdue already, and the germination rate is very low already. So farmers have to plant more. So have to use more seed. So the question is, so this is one part, is the input. Then farmers, to make it more simple, to link up the input supply with the farmers and the farmers with the rice millers, and also to millers, and to get this would be a contract farming system, so that farmers can be, and that the millers, for example, provide all the necessary input on time and not leaving it to the single or individual farmer, but also then to see what are the policy frameworks to support the complete system. We call it, I would rather call it, to make it more symbiotic, what is the enabling environment to make it symbiotic? And these are different levels we have to look into to have this environment provides an attractive investment climate and dynamic entrepreneurship, so that where all parties play together and see to get to a win-win situation. On this one, and this is what Akari is doing in his approach, that we are looking really forward to get all these parties together and to look into this value achievement approach. The aim is our approach is to foster linkages amongst rice value chain actors, and as a result to create a win-win situation for all stakeholders. So it means knowledge management and cooperation to get it in, exchange of experience between the things, and also to have policy advice, so that all parties and stakeholders are in the sector and cooperate and will develop an understanding of the situation of each other. The challenges, but also the challenges, or sometimes the constraints, like on the policy level, they are looking, if I have to support my people in Lagos, put it like this, or in the capital, but also for farmers. The one would like to get very cheap, I would like to have a rather cheap price to support, or the other one would like on the rural areas, I would like a correct price for my product. So how to, this is for in the policy sometimes all the time a challenge to call it, to understand both sides, but also to comfort both sides. So it's a very so it has to find a way how to get into the system and to see that everybody's in. But this can also be only achieved if you have a holistic view and everybody understands how the others act. The question is not if it's a symbiotic, or it's rather a mutualism in the sector. That all mutualism means rather than all all parts in the chain will depend on the others. And if if the chain is breaks, then it doesn't. Then we will have an interruption. So this is the system. Okay.
Thank you. So mutualism rather than symbiotism.
Symbiotics, yes.
Yes. Great, thank you. I think I'll take this over to Jay and ask him to explain to us how UPL's integrated approach, if you can use UPL's integrated approach to build on this response, how can we achieve mutualism?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you know, UPL is a global company, and we have different solutions, and we cater to smallholder farmers in India, but we also deal with farmers in Brazil who are enormous, is the only word which can be used. But so I believe that farmers everywhere need some kind of support and guidance. And in India, we have been able to develop a whole value chain network. So we connect farmers with the value chains for offtake. We then also help them to solve particular problems with technology which they are facing. And for example, in India, the inflation on labor is so high, and the farmers, small farmers, cannot afford mechanization. So we have spent almost $100 million today and set up mechanization at the village level, where the farmers can actually just call a service to spray his field and to be able to get the right chemicals at the right time. We've developed technology which can help reduce the water use by almost 30 to 40%, and also when there's flooding, that the fertilizer doesn't get washed away. So all these things, depending on the farmer's needs, we can do that. Most importantly, we have to hold his hand during the crisis period and help him to test this technology. Farmers, smallholder farmers are investing most of their capital on their farm every year, and we have to understand the sensitivities to do that. So he needs to be sure that what technology he's using, the investment he's making, is going to not get wasted. And this is why it does take some time, where you do demonstration plots, you work, hold his hand, and there's a lot of, and once they learn that, you will see fast adoption, because they see the neighbors and you will do that. The most important thing is, and I believe the single most important thing in India which has happened successfully is the offtake, minimum guaranteed offtake agreement. So the government guarantees that at a certain price they will always buy the rice, always buy the wheat, and this gives them a sort of comfort that I can always get money for my grain. And this has helped farmers to be a little bit more relaxed about it, about that. But I believe in Africa, we need to set up demonstration farms. We need to set up extension activities. We need to go work in the universities and train young students. And companies like ours would love to hire them and help them to live in the villages and give them work with farmers to bring in improvements. I believe this is the standard, very proven way to develop agriculture.
Thanks, Jay. May I ask you to take a question from the audience, which has something to do with your existing footprint in Western Central Africa? Where can they access your products? And what cost? Well, just let them know what your footprint is. I think also very critically, there's a question about the buying hybrid seeds every year and whether that is affordable.
Sure. So in West Africa, UPL is present in Mali, Burkina Faso. We have some partners in Niger. We are of course, in a very strong way in Ivory Coast, Ghana, and I think in Senegal, etc. So we have a strong presence. I believe we do not have some direct presence in Sierra Leone, but I'm sure with the inspiration speech of the minister, we would love to increase our presence and set up a base there. As far as hybrid seeds are concerned, worldwide hybrid seeds is a technology which is developed basically to give, it gives you a boost in yield. And farmers around the world have switched to hybrid seeds. While we believe that local seeds should also be available, and our strategy is to develop small farmers who will produce local seed. We will segregate and we will clean them, and we will seed treat them and make them available so that the germination rate, as Wolfgang was mentioning, it's very important that the farmers get confidence, because the seeds are kept at the right temperature, stored in the right environment, and the farmers get a decent germination rate and good quality seeds. It's absolutely a must. But I believe longer term, once the farmers get used to develop, grow the seeds with OP, or open pollinated seed, when you want the second boost of production in agriculture, hybrid seeds can help increase the productivity by another 20 to 30%. This can be adopted by farmers who are more advanced. But I think both the platforms of technology should be available to the farmers to choose that, because I believe if we are successful in the first phase, I think 5-6 years from now, and you want to be an exporter, then you can do that. I mean, I think Africa Rice has done good work on developing good varieties of OP rice, and I think those technologies should be commercialized. But also, I believe that local production of hybrid rice should take place and should be available to the farmers who want to increase their profitability and increase their productivity.
Thank you, Jay. I'm going to shift to climate change. There was already a comment from the audience about climate change and the intensification of production capacity of rice. This has to do with intensifying production sustainably. Rice producers are both victims and contributors to climate change, and rice is estimated to generate 10% of global methane emissions. Rice also requires 40% of the world's irrigation water. So how do we ensure that consumers are able to procure healthy and sustainable rice? How can we ensure more sustainable rice cultivation while intensifying production? I think I'll direct this one to Wolfgang.
Am I muted? Yes. No. Okay. Climate change, of course, it's one of the topics we are talking, and it's getting more and more serious. Especially it's getting more and more, and people are considering it. And what we realized that especially for sub-Saharan Africa, the topic climate change is getting more and more serious. Looking at different studies, what we saw that especially in Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, the production zones are moving from the north to the south. So it means the north, for some areas, are not anymore able to produce certain crops. So they have to switch over to other crops. So what I realized in some areas, like now, instead maize, they're going back to millet, as millet is the only crop surviving in these areas. So what it means also for rice production, where will be the future rice production zones in the different countries? Here, for example, in Burkina, they are moving them down further down to the borders to Cote d'Ivoire. What will happen in Nigeria? Will it go further down, or going related to the floodplains? Okay, this is a question where production zones are changing with the time, where they are moving, and I think there is some more information and more studies are needed for this one. But looking back, the studies show that But what can we do about towards small-scale farmers? So it means really to go into training of small-scale farmers in new rice production systems, especially in water, proper water management, to see how they can do change water management systems to reduce flooding, and so to reduce methane release, also to reduce by proper water management the volatilization of ammonium. There are all of these systems. Then the next one would be to look at the proper and adjusted rice varieties, because also what Chai already mentioned, we are not talking only about drought. In some areas, we are talking about higher floodings in the meantime. So it means now this erratic rainfalls, how they can work on that one. And then it means also to see better weather forecasts, so farmers are prepared to to react on a shorter time. So this would be a part. What I said also, I mentioned already, then proper rice varieties adjusted to the different challenges and to the risks. But also for the farmer, it would be to say diversification of the system to minimize his risk already. It's not only to say, oh, I can make 20 hectares of rice, but also to see how can I go into the system, what can I change? And of course, if you go in a drought-prone regions, mechanization would be a next opportunity to do land preparation on time. So seed is going on in timely to prepare a timely seeding and or transplanting. It depends on the region. If you do still transplanting, or some farmers are still doing broadcasting, or what are the new technologies? So these are quite, and also training is a very, the most important will be training of farmers into new rice production systems and to check what is in it. And this means that also farmers, but also is going to climate change, that to afford all these new technologies, farmers would have to need what already mentioned several times, access to finance, to afford these new technologies to do this one. Looking forward, what the Minister of Agriculture from Sierra Leone did, to invest also into mechanization to accelerate the preparation of the lands. That's so far from my side.
Let me take this over to the smallholder perspective. And Salamatu, I want to ask you this question from your perspective. How are your members adapting to climate change and implementing climate smart agricultural practices?
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. For the smallholder farmers, I think they bear the biggest shock for climate change issues. If you take, for instance, the just completed dry season farming, unexpectedly, we had rains just at the time farmers were expected to start harvesting their dry season rice. So at the end of the day, we had the paddy soaked when it's supposed to be dry, and that affected it. The same thing with scarcity of water. You find out that some of the tunnels that they are supposed to use in watering few of the farmers that have, hello, are you hearing me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay. A lot of the farmers faced challenges with the water management. Either they are not getting access to it directly due to some technical failures in the facilities, or because they didn't have sufficient water pumps and things like that. So farmers faced either shock of water scarcity in the crops, or they had flood where unexpected rain had come. We're looking at situation where we can do small dams, little water boreholes for them that they can also use in supporting their agricultural facilities. For the Carry project, we supported some of the farmers with treadle pump. These are pumping machines that don't use petrol and it does not use diesel, so it's manually operated. It helped them in saving costs. But more of that support is needed to support the farmers. So in most cases, you find out that this shock and changes in climate change is creating a lot of problem for the farmers and discouraging them from participating in dry season farming. Also, like one of my colleagues mentioned now, weather forecast is very, very important. And I think there needs to be a relationship. We must marry weather forecasting together with extension messages and get ample support from government so that a farmer will know when to apply pesticide so it doesn't get washed away by rains. Also, the loading of fertilizer and pesticides on this produce is of concern. And I tie it also to climate factors, because if the soils get over-concentrated with these things, it affects rice production. Taking us back to issue of seed, that seeds must be tolerant to both water scarcity and flood. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Salamatu. It's good to hear from the smallholder perspective. I'd like to ask my panelists to each give me one final thought. Let me just check that I'm not missing any questions from the audience in this process. Mr. Obi, unfortunately, seems not to be able to rejoin us technically. I saw an email from him, so I'll send his question to him and ask him to come to the platform and respond in the chat. In the meantime, I'm going to go to each of my panelists and ask them one final question. What are your thoughts? Is self-sufficiency a reality or a fantasy? I'd like to start with Salamatu.
It's a reality if we follow the right path. And I want to believe that we're not just talking, we're going to end up taking action. I want to solicit for innovation platforms where all of us can come together under one roof, all relevant stakeholders. I also see a situation where research is translated into action and stop remaining on the shelves of the researchers. Contract farming needs to be sharpened up, and mechanization and ICT needs to be at the front burner of increased production. If we take that with a pinch of salt, I assure you we'll be singing a different song. And of course, agricultural production, especially rice production in the value chain, needs to be youth, that's male youth and female youth, as well as women friendly, so that we take it as a vocation. Thank you.
Thank you, Salamatu. Let me take this question over to Wolfgang and ask him, do you think this is a reality or a fantasy? Self-sufficiency.
No, self-sufficiency is not a dream, it's reality, because it depends on the different, if you look at the system, what is necessary. Obi quite in the beginning told quite a number of factors which will help to achieve self-sufficiency. I think it's what I would my thoughts are. It's quite a little bit reiterating what he told already. So it means very important to achieve self-sufficiency is an enabling environment that provides for an attractive investment climate and dynamic entrepreneurship. Adequate mechanism, processes, and structures that address local needs. And my other part is active private sector institution and linkages. I think we have really to put on to get the private sector more in. And this is also depend on the enabling environment for investment. And also what also already Salamatu said, functioning and effective infrastructure, hard and soft, and access to integrated and open markets. And most important, access to effective and efficient support services and resources. I think this one will be very important to get it. But also, if you're looking a little bit more into the rural areas, because local organizations, groups, and associations representing the poor as building blocks. So these are then, if you have these cornerstones and they can filled with life, I think self-sufficiency can be achieved in a short time. Short time means in agriculture 5 to 8 years. To be very optimistic, because developments take time in agriculture.
Yes.
It's not from one day to another day. It takes time because it's also part, what I call it all the time, behavioral change on all levels and changing mindsets.
Wow. So a short time in agriculture is 8 years. And in 8 years, we can hope for some change.
Yeah.
Jay, I want to take the
Thank
question
you.
to you. Do you think self-sufficiency is a reality or a fantasy?
No, I think it's definitely a reality. I mean, we are very fortunate. Today, we already have 6 million hectares just in the ECOWAS region of rice production. This is a amazing platform. So it's not like you're teaching farmers to grow rice. You're just helping them to improve technology. This is a different level, right? If you had to teach them to move from growing sorghum or millet to grow rice, it's different. They already understand rice. So you have a basic platform. Now the idea is the existing productivity is low, below 1 ton. We have to double it, 2 tons. We can triple it. Actually, the best farmers in the world produce even more than 4 tons. So I believe that we have an amazing platform to be able to have self-sufficiency. I believe that any kind of increase in productivity will help the GDP of the ECOWAS and African economy. So it's really going to help them grow because they will stop importing this income, as the minister was saying, will go to the farmers and they will spend money, they will educate their children, they will build better houses, they will improve their quality of life. It's so important for the world that Africa GDP grows more in these difficult times. And I believe that there is technology, and I believe that the governments are committed. And if the governments are committed, we as a private sector are convinced, absolutely convinced, that we can double the productivity. We don't even need to increase the number of acres. We can just take the existing amount of farmland and just help the farmers to increase productivity. I also like to say that if you reward and recognize farmers, we must reward and recognize farmers for better climate practices, for improving productivity, reducing the impact of climate change. You will see a massive difference. Farmers are as hungry to benefit from their and help their families to improve their quality of life. I have spent a lot of time with farmers, and I'm convinced any kind of support and reward and recognition, you will see a very fast transition. And I agree with Wolf, and it's not an overnight thing, but we are fortunate that there is already 6 million hectares of land under rice farming. So we just have to work with these guys. You don't have to teach completely new things to these farmers. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. So, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard from our eminent panel. They believe that self-sufficiency is a reality, not a fantasy. It may take some time. It does need a lot of investment, and we do need to integrate and include women and youth in the production and processing of rice in the region. But all my panelists seem to be in agreement. This is a reality and not a fantasy. What about you? What do you think? Is it a fantasy or a reality? Would love to hear from you in the comments section, and we look forward to connecting with you and to discussing further. I'm also going to ask all my panelists to make sure that they come into the comment section on the chat at the AGRF platform, and also respond as may be relevant to various comments and questions that I may have overlooked during this session. I really want to thank you all for finding the time to be with us, for staying fully engaged during the duration of a session. And thank you to all our keynote speakers. Dr. Abu Karim had to leave in the middle of a session, but he sent me a personal note and said it was a very enlightening conversation, and he was very grateful for having been able to participate in the brief part. He also sent his regards to his colleague. I hope you got them. And thank you everyone for sharing your knowledge, your insights, and your time with us. On behalf of the Competitive African Rice Initiative and United Phosphorus, I would love to wish you all a wonderful day and to invite you to enjoy the rest of the AGRF sessions that I'm sure are going to be equally enlightening and engaging. Kalisa, Thank you so much for the technical support. And at this moment, I think we can consider this session closed. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much, Elizabeth. Thank you.